Welcome. I'm back. In this segment, I'm going to talk about the importance of traveling. Traveling is something that a lot of people underestimate. Um, I think that they underestimate it because, in a lot of ways, they take things for granted. They don't really realize that up until 100, 200 years, not even 200, up until, yeah, let's go up until 200 years ago. I mean, things like, TV, internet didn't really exist like that. So the world was a lot smaller in a sense. And when you met somebody from a different culture, it was a bigger honor. And you didn't really take it for granted because, you had to go on a boat and sail. And that could take months, depending on where it is, from reach point A to point B. So in a lot of ways, a lot of times people were more isolated. We come from a world now that the internet has connected everything, connected the whole world. You know, I could be anywhere in the world and still listen to the same radio station, still see the same TV shows as I would if I'll be in America or Asia or any place like that. And in a lot of ways, on one hand, it's made it easier, but then on another hand, people take a lot of things for granted. And when it comes down to trying to better your life and change your life, I can't really describe because I can't really describe it. Really, only experience is gonna know this, but I'm gonna try to describe it as best as I can to motivate you to do it. But honestly, only experience is gonna have you understand what I mean totally. I can't begin to describe the importance of traveling because a lot of our social views, political views, views on other races, views on gender, views on anything, even spirituality to some extent. Um, a lot of it's affected by our environment. And if you don't change environments or at least see different environments, which is better like it, more like it, you you miss out on a lot because one of the things that a lot of people don't understand with life is, yeah, you could accumulate facts, but it's also about accumulating facts, but looking at the same fact from a different perception, which in a way is the higher level. And in a way, that's what travel does. Many times, especially with the internet, you hear stories of because I know because I've I've traveled a lot in my life. That's the one blessing I have, and in a lot of ways, in my mind, I wouldn't even be here if I didn't travel. I'll be real with you. Traveling was, to me, more beneficial to me than my college degree. Honestly, traveling to me was more beneficial than even any book I've ever read because in a lot of ways, there's certain things that I understand now that I wouldn't have understood if I didn't travel. And in a lot of ways, sometimes when you only been to one country or only been to your native country, you definitely see the world. You definitely your perception of the world is limited, and especially since the reason why is because we live in a globalized world right now. Totally, you know, it's funny to elites. Elites, no, we don't really have countries anymore. They're all one country, honestly. Because why? Because there's no real border like that anymore. I could go in and listen to Russian music or listen to music from Uganda or their TV shows. In a lot of ways, it's easier now than even sometimes, you know, a lot of stuff in your own country. To be honest, because sometimes the stuff in your own country, like let's say you're like the underground scene, you may not be able to get it on the internet, but you could get the pop scene of some other country. So it's musical scene, pop musical scene. So in a lot of ways, travel, the internet has really opened up the boundaries, and every place is global. Everything is globalized now. So, computers they'll be, you know, made in Singapore, shipped to America. You got a computer problem, you're talking to somebody in India. It's a total globalized world. So even when it comes to the job market is affected because people in different countries have to compete with each other. The dating scene is basically affected because people now go to other countries to date, to have fun, like to get married. And in a lot of ways, the competition is endless. And the thing is, elites know this. For the most part, it's, in America you see it, but sometimes it goes up and down because we got people like George Bush who I think never left the country before he became president. He only left the country twice, and one of them was to go to I think China with his father, who was the president at the time. Like crazy. I mean, America, unless sometimes you get rich people who don't travel, but for the most part, in other countries, though, no question, if you're rich, you're traveling. You know, and the interesting thing is, you can sometimes talk to people, and you can know who hasn't traveled. And this is not about being elitist. I'll do the same thing if I was making a video about education. In a lot of ways, You have to travel because the world's globalized. You're competing with a global market. Your friends, your coworkers, your spouses sometimes, maybe from other places. And even if it's not, one of the biggest things I think is a problem in the world is that because they don't travel, we make a lot of assumptions. Because the bad thing with the internet is the internet sometimes spreads stories that may not necessarily be true or may be true based on our perception. And that's a big difference because I tell you the truth, what you may read on the internet about a place and when you go there you see it, it might be two different things. Because you'll have to remember this. A lot of people now might say, I traveled, I've been to the Caribbean, they'll list like 4 or 5 Caribbean islands and stuff like that. And I'll be like, well, Canada or wherever, Europe. Um, I only picked the Caribbean for this reason because in the Caribbean you have a lot of resorts, right? And some people would travel, go to the resort, not leave the resort, and then say I went to Dominican Republic. They never left the resort once. The only time they left is to go to the airport. That's not the travel I'm talking about. When I say travel, I mean mingle with the locals. That's what I mean. Visit the nature, the natural environment of that region. Me personally, I like to go to low income. I like to go to like bad neighborhoods of every country I go to because in my mind, that's where you see the real people. I get the real feel of the place. You know, Americans know it. It's like living in California, only being Hollywood, or living in New York, only being to Manhattan. You're not going to see the real essence of California, New York with that mentality. And it's the same way for traveling to other countries. I picked the Caribbean because a lot of people, because I mean, don't get me wrong, you have this too in Europe where people go to Europe and don't go leave the resort, or you have it where they go to cruises, and the cruises will go to 4 or 5 countries, and then they'll say they're dipping to 4 or 5 countries. I don't count that. When I say travel, I mean mingling with the people. And in a lot of ways, sometimes we don't do that, and you see it because that's one of the hidden reasons why in certain areas Americans are losing because in Europe they speak 3 4 languages, 5 languages sometimes because they travel. They gotta they go to France, Spain, Germany. Sometimes you have to pick up language here and there, and in a lot of ways we lose that sometimes. And traveling in a lot of ways, honestly, I'll be real with you, and I know a lot of people are gonna not gonna like when I say this. Traveling is a part of enlightenment, is a part of your business success. I don't see how you could become enlightened and you've never traveled or have no interest in other cultures. Because when you travel, it changes your spirituality. It changes everything. Because if you're traveling the way you're supposed to travel, where you mingle with the people, you learn to have a respect for other people's cultures that you normally wouldn't. Because if I'm going to the hood of another country, I got to give respect because I'm by myself and you be like, oh shoot, you go disrespectful, what will happen? The same way how even the education system, foreign exchange programs and going to school in another country for a semester, those are life-changing experiences. People talk about Barack Obama. They could talk about his education all he wants. I'm telling you the truth. If he didn't grow up in if he wasn't born in Indonesia and travel the way he did, he probably wouldn't be Barack Obama. He probably wouldn't be president. That is just as important as his education because it helped him be able to deal with different types of people. And many people only see the world from their point of view. And if you see the world from only your point of view, how do you expect to compete in a globalized world? There's many things people take for granted that their whole perception would change if they travel. You might get a person who thinks that their skin is dark, right? And they say they're not exotic. And because their skin is dark, right? Let's say in America, you may say, oh, I'm black, I'm not exotic. Then that same person will go to Scandinavia, and when they go to Scandinavia, oh shoot, you become exotic. So then you say, is there such thing as being exotic? Not really. Being exotic depends on where you are. I'll be honest with you. Even being intellectuals like that, because go to certain places, you get intellectual in certain places, in certain countries, you're an intellectual based on you go to school. They consider you intellectual. You got 2 degrees. But in some countries, one thing you first see real quick, you start to see some places are big in critical thinking, where you go to school, but you have to apply the knowledge. So you become what's called a critical thinker. Where some places they just get education, so all they could do is just recite facts, and that happens all the time. So even what you consider educated, what you consider class, every possible thing that you can see will change depending on the country you are in. And in a lot of ways, at times, when we talk about changing our lives, we have to use everything that's available to us. Traveling has now never been this cheap. And, a lot of times right now, the way the world is, you want to take advantage of that. I mean, I might be telling you, don't go to a country and just, go on a cruise or go on a resort and not see the country. But if the cruise is cheaper or the resort is cheaper and you can't do it any other way, hey, I mean, 3, 4 countries in one shot, even if it's not really seen it, it's better than not going at all. And in a lot of ways, it will change your perception. And a lot of times, one of the hidden, silent um, secrets is that when you look at the people who are really successful, being able to think in different ways and being able to perceive different things is definitely a skill that's needed, especially if you're not already rich. Because you get entertainers sometimes who would say they travel the world, but they travel the world when they were entertainers already. Once that happened, they're never gonna be able to mingle with the cultures like when they never did. Like if they were to went to certain places before they became famous. So in a lot of ways, you have to understand when it comes time to change your life, you don't have the same advantages that other people have who have more money. So you have to use every skill, every trick that you can use. So being able to perceive different people is important. One advice I would give when you talk about traveling, I would give is that I would never go to a country unless I study that people for 3 months before I go. That way, when you go, that's what the internet. That's the one thing internet will help you with, where you could search anybody and you get so many different things about that place. It's not even funny. Now, of course, some wrong, some right, but at the same time, you want to kind of you got to research because many people go to countries and they don't even research the country or they research superficial things. You must research the history, the spirituality of that place to understand it. You know, and a lot of times, I know many people would look at the video and say, okay, I get it, but they don't understand how traveling is. Traveling, it's to me, I honestly think it's the greatest gift you could have. I'm sorry, I think that because it affects so many other facets of your life, from your perception, you know, even your patience. Because when you go to certain places, especially if you go places that you normally wouldn't go, you got to become patient because you're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna get lost, different languages. You might be put in situations that you normally would never be put in when you're back home, especially if you're from America, Europe. So I don't really think I could really explain to people in full detail the importance of traveling. The most I could try to do is help try to jumpstart you, try to motivate you to start doing it. Because traveling will change your life. And it definitely is one of the tools that you need to take control of your life, re- jumpstart your dreams, create your home environment. So until next time, peace.